Yeah. Startup stuff is always good because it's so frustrating. All right, so here we go with part 2. We now have a navigation controller, navigation bar. So the UI navigation controller is the class that manages that, and then it has a .nav navigation bar member variable in it, and that's what actually affects the appearance of it, and you add nav items to it and that kind of stuff. So, but for right now, we're just going to mess with the controller. All right, so in order to use it though, so we have this second view controller that we created. It's pretty blank right now, but it has a background color. So what we'll do actually is to make, no, we'll just leave it as is. In order to get to this guy, what we need to do is we need to navigate from the first view controller to the second one. And we're going to do it in code. So back here in the first view controller, when we do our fade to black here, this guy, after we do that, we actually want to do something meaningful for the user other than just fade him to black. So we're going to say we're going to create a variable here, SVC, because I don't like to type, equals second view controller. So it already knows about, you don't have to enter any parameters, it already knows about the second view controller because it's included in our project. And with that guy constructed, there's all kinds of magic that happens. So now we can just say this. Oh yeah, now that we also, because we embedded our first view controller in a navigation controller, now this guy also has one of these. He has a navigation controller. So we can say self.navigationController, and what we're going to do is say push, we're going to push a view controller onto the nav stack. So you push and you pop controllers with the nav, that's what the navigation controller does. We're going to do it programmatically. So the view controller we're pushing onto the nav stack is SVC, our second view controller, animated true. That will give it a little a visible motion when it navigates. So self.navigationController.pushViewController, and then that should navigate us to the second view controller. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. So have you guys discussed the concept of queues and stacks at all? As far as data structures, a stack is a philo structure, first in, last out. So you push something onto the stack and then you pop it off. All right, so I'm going to...
really weird. It should accept any 5 letters, right?
Yeah.
Up at the top?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't, for whatever reason, on mine.
All right.
Mine went to a red screen, though.
Yeah, mine went to a red screen, but I couldn't put...
With a back button.
Yep.
No.
All right, so that's what it should do. It should go to the red screen, which is the second view controller. And then because of the fact we faded it out here on the first screen, it'll come back to a black screen if you hit the back button. So that back button comes along free of charge because of the fact that we embedded that view controller in the navigation controller. So the navigation controller knows that there's multiple view controllers and it knows what the navigation stack is, so it creates that back button for you. But now again, we still don't have anything meaningful, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it. And what we're going to want to do is anytime we come into the first view controller, we're going to want to fade it back in. So what we can do is we can take this code that fades it out and copy it. Command C, copy that out of our button tap. And then in our view did load,
Well, what did you do there?
I just copied that UI view.animate with duration
Oh, okay.
in the first view controller. So when we come back to the first view controller, we want to make sure that it is visible. It's not a black screen. So when we come back to it, we're going to fade back in. So let's, for right now, although this is not going to work, what we'll do is in the view did load, go ahead and put it in here and put it at the end of the method. Just paste it in. Only in here, you want to revert this so it's fading back in. So, and I missed the closing curly. You want to fade it back to 1. So 1.0 is complete opacity. And I also need to add in this guy. So what we're doing is, in the view did load of the first view controller, we are making sure that the view is totally opaque. So when you come back to it, it'll be visible. But this won't work right. I'll show you here in a second that at least I'm predicting, unless they change something in Xcode 8 and iOS 10, it shouldn't work. The concept is right, but I'll show you why it doesn't work in a minute. All right, so I go back and nope, it doesn't work. All right, so the reason why is in the view did load, that's where everything initializes, right? But with the view did load, this only gets called one time. The view did load method only gets called when the app first starts up, and it first creates the view. Now, if you want to do some sort of initialization to the view every single time it becomes visible or it goes back to it, what you need to do is code in this guy, and we'll do this. Just type view down near the bottom of your class, view will, and it'll give you a bunch of methods. What we're looking for is view will appear. Okay, and the view will appear gets called every single time you navigate back here. So I'm going to take the code that I pasted into the view did load. I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to paste it down in the view will appear method.
Do we need to do anything with the pool? Animated
Nope.
pool and pool?
Nope. And you can go and run it. I gotta fix my line yet, but
Mine is black.
then it should fade back in.
Still got my login information.
Yep. So that's, I mean, it should actually, I mean, if the user logs in, once they're logged in, they should be logged in. But all right, so a couple of things cosmetically that need to be fixed. The line is not in the right place for me. And then the other thing is, typically when you have a multi-view app like this and you get a login screen or a first screen that you come into, the second screen, you want to have a navigation bar, and the navigation bar on most apps usually will be the same color as the background. So this is kind of ugly, having this pinkish sort of screen or pinkish bar up here. And the reason it's pink is that the nav bar, by default, by the way Apple makes it, is kind of it's got a tint to it. So it's not totally opaque, and so it kind of takes on the color of the view. And then it also has its own color, which is gray by default, so that's why you end up with a pink background. So we need to, I want to fix this so that this guy isn't on the first screen. I just want the logo to be at the top. And then on the second screen, I want it to not be that ugly pink color. So a couple things we'll need to do in order to accomplish that. All right. So what we'll do, first of all, the first part of the problem is easy to fix. In the view will appear method that we just added after the animate with duration, or actually before the animate with duration. First line in the view will appear. What we're going to say is self.NavigationController dot Navigationbar. That's the guy I told you about. That's a member variable. It's the nav bar itself. Dot hidden is true. So we're gonna make the navigation bar invisible on that first screen. And go ahead and run that. So this will run every time it comes to the view because this is in the view will appear. And there it is. So that's why I did not move my line down, because I figured that once I made the navigation bar invisible, that real estate at the top of this screen would be back again. So that's why it should be fine now. See what happens when we go log in. Except now it's hidden over here. All right, so now we need to fix that. So we want it to be visible on the second view controller, because now we're stuck there. So I'm going to do a product stop. And in the second view controller, we need to set some properties on it so that it's visible. First thing we need to do is add a view will appear to our second view controller like we did to our first one, because we need to have this happen every single time it comes in here.
Do you want that inside the class?
Yep. That is a class function. It is an override, so this guy exists on UI view. All UI view derived classes have a view will appear. Or I shouldn't say UI view derived classes. All UI view controller derived classes will have a view will appear. Because what this is telling the controller is, hey, your view is now appearing. It's becoming visible. There's also, so there's a order of operations here. There's also a view did appear. So the way it works, the order in which this happens is the first thing that gets hit when the app first starts is the view did load. Then when you come to the view and it actually gets loaded, you get the view will appear just before it becomes visible. Then after all the variables are initialized and filled on the screen, the view did appear gets fired. Okay, so we're going to work with the view will appear. First thing we want to do is say,
Question.
yeah.
Xcode quit unexpectedly. Should I report?
Yeah, go ahead and report it to Apple. They'll sit back and scoff.
Another quick question.
Yeah.
Mine is still doing that thing where it goes to the white screen and I have to stop it and just like open it up in the simulator.
Yeah, I think it's probably your simulator is like getting confused, like it's trying to start the same process while it's already running. So if it does that, just stop the app and then restart it. I think some of these machines are a little slower than others too. They're just getting kind of old. Okay, and the view will appear. Well, I'll wait till you got yours reloaded, Glenn.
I'm good.
Okay. And the view will appear. Now we can say this. We can do the opposite of what we did before. Self.NavigationController.NavigationBar.visible, or I'm sorry, .hidden equals false, because we want it to be visible.
What would happen if you tried to do that visibility, or can you do that, or is there a function or a property like that?
Visible?
Yeah.
I
I
think.
mean, if you didn't use the same verbiage, is it going to fight, or is it?
No, I probably just wouldn't. With Apple, what they usually do is if it's not what they intend for you to use, it just doesn't do anything.
Is there a dot visible or something?
Oops. Nope. Sometimes they do that. They have very similar properties, and only one of them works. But in this case, they didn't. They only have the hidden. All right, so we're going to set the hidden to be false, which means it's visible. But we also do not want to have it pink. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it to the same color as, we'll still be able to see it because it'll have the back button on it and it'll have a line that has like a separator line. So it'll still be visible, but it's going to be the same color as the rest of the screen. So we're going to end up borrowing, what we'll do is we'll say self.navigationcontroller.navigationbar.background color equals, and then we can just copy this guy up here. Equals that color. But that doesn't completely satisfy the needs of Apple. So in addition to that, we have to set what's called the bar tint color. I mentioned that before. Self.navigationcontroller.navigationbar.bar tint color is the name of it. That equals the same thing. Now with both of those set, it should set the color of the nav bar to be the same as the screen. I'll go ahead and run that guy. And my fade isn't working the way I want it. But anyway, yeah, now you can see the nav bar looks the way I wanted it to. Got the back button visible. You go back, it fades back in, so all is well. Does everyone have theirs working okay?
Is there a reason the back button is blue at this point? Does it have something to do with our login color?
That's the default button color.
Blue is?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Still trying to write using the colors.
Yep. It should be the same as up here. So I think you'll have it in a few different places. You can just copy that and paste it. Okay, you guys ready?
2 seconds.
All right. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. We still don't have a whole lot going on. We just kind of navigate to a second view controller and you can navigate back. So now on the second view controller, we're going to add a new control where the user is viewing edification, excuse me. All right. So with the second view controller .zib file selected, stupid mouse. There you are. All right. I'm going to shrink this a little bit so you can see. All right. So in this guy, in this zib, and this guy right now is disconnected from the storyboard, but it still has a life of its own. So you can design this just like you would a storyboard controller. What we're going to do is we're going to put a new type of control. Right. So far we've worked with labels and buttons and text fields. What we're looking for now is a text view class. And that's table view, text view. So text view is a multi-line view or text display, and it creates a scroll bar if the text goes beyond the bounds of the control. So that's the guy we want. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna provide some information to the user about mid-state. I'm gonna take this guy, bring it over to my story or my zip file, drop it on there, and then I'm going to increase the size of it, make it a little bigger. Then the other thing I'm going to do is that centering trick I taught you guys, where you, with the control selected, you do the control drag straight down, and then pick the center horizontally in container, and then that'll center it. So now the only constraint I have is that, but you notice that you get this little red button. Yeah.
So yours is like a rectangle, mine's like a square.
Yeah, you can just size it. So it plops it on there as a
So
square.
The actual outline of
The form.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy?
The form.
Okay, yeah, what you can do is in the, let's see here, if you go up to the view at the top level, if you go up to the size where it says simulated metrics and it says inferred, you can tell it, I think maybe yours is, that's weird. Detail.
Mine was on
You gotta change it too often. I turned mine to 4S to make it.
Yeah, see, on Xcode 8, I don't have that option, but you guys should have the ability to change that to a specific size.
I changed it. You said directly the smallest size, so I just went to the smallest.
Yeah, that's fine. So on mine, on Xcode 8, I think it's smarter now, so it just defaults to whatever size your storyboard is set at. Do you have so yours is set to inferred?
Yeah, it was.
Do you have, okay, so did you change it to one of the sizes? Did that fix it, Isaiah? All right. So then you want to center this guy in there.
Did you do the controls top and bottom or top and side?
I just clicked on it and then I did a control drag down.
Yep.
Like
Did you
that.
do a control drag up too, or
Nope,
side?
nope, I just did drag down
Okay.
just to center. All I want to do is center it horizontally. I'm not worried about the vertical right now. Okay. Then they go ahead and they plop this text in there. By default, you get this Piglet and stuff. So what I'm going to do, in the interest of making this a true mid-state app, go out to the mid-state homepage, and I'll go to the About option. There's Sue Bujak. I'm going to go ahead and plagiarize her stuff here. I'm going to take the first couple of paragraphs of this text here, right off the website. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to come over here, and then in the design center in the text view over on the right, I'm going to paste it in. And then it should appear for you in the control. And we could mess around with the font and make it smaller too if it doesn't appear and stuff, but for right now that's probably good enough. So let's try, now we can try running that again and see if that, that works.
Yeah.
I'm going to disconnect my hardware keyword too. so I can type. It's just faster. And it's not visible. So I think it's probably not visible because there's a constraint that's breaking it. So that's probably why we have the little red ball up here.
Oh, mine worked.
Mine worked, but it wasn't sized.
Yeah, in Xcode 7, it's not nearly as strict with the constraint stuff.
We have not put a way to turn off the keyboard on that page apparently yet either.
What's that?
We didn't have it doesn't turn off the keyboard on the second page yet either.
The keyboard shouldn't really, once you dismiss it, it should be
I
gone.
clicked on the page and
Somewhere I messed up my code where every time I open it, it will fade to black once I get into the login screen.
Yeah, you probably have to reverse it so that it's probably setting the alpha of the view to 0, and you want it to set it to 1. So in the where you're doing this stuff here, this guy needs to be set to 1. It's probably 0. All right.
So which one was that? That's
In the view will appear of the view controller file.
okay. I see.
Yep.
So it's
All right. I gotta fix my broken constraints.
so it's supposed to the keyboard should do the tab press even on the second page now?
It shouldn't come up on the second page at all.
If I clicked in the box.
Oh, you clicked in the box.
I'm
Okay.
like, I can't get it to go in now.
Yeah, we'll have to add that functionality back into here too. I first have to get mine to appear. So I got to set some constraint. With Xcode 8, it's a lot more rigid with the constraint thing. So it's like you gotta do it, set them all, or else it doesn't appear like you guys were seeing before. All right. I'm gonna set this to be 45.
Thanks, Sean.
Yep. And centered, so now I'm going to set the width. And the height. You guys probably don't have to do any of this if you're on Xcode 7 yet. And see if that fixes my problem with it not showing up. But so you know, when you get to Xcode 8, if you when you add the centering constraint, then it wants all the other constraints to go along with it.
Should do the side constraints too?
I think just centering it will take care of that, but you have to set it vertically as well. Yeah, now it appears I'm going to have to bump it down a little bit. All right. Okay. So what you're saying is you click in here and then the keyboard, oh yeah, I turned off my keyboard.
Click in there, the blasting, you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, all right. So that's the same kind of thing where,
Okay, how did you set your constraints then?
so what I did was, after I did the centering constraint, I also I did a control, like I did with yours before, you control drag up to the top,
Yep.
and then you set the top space to container, that guy,
Yep.
and I'm going to set that to be about 50. Yep. And then the other thing I had to do was I had to set a width and a height constraint. So I had to tell it how large it has to be. So to set the width and height, all you do is you do a control drag inside of it. If you drag down, that'll set the height. And then if you drag sideways inside it, that'll allow you to set the width.
And what did you set for height? Just click height?
I just set it to what it was, whatever it was set in here. All that basically tells it is it has to be that width and height.
Where was that again?
It's just a control.
Yeah, so you do a control drag inside it, and it gives you a height option. And you do a press control and drag and go sideways, and then that gives you a width option. And then you set both of those. So then when you look over here under your text view, you should have a width and a height constraint. And you can change those. You can type those in if you want, or you can also change the size of it by dragging on it.
How did you get that placeholders to show up on the side there?
Placeholder over here, you mean?
Ah, got it.
All right, so to get rid of the keyboard issue, all you have to do is with this is just for viewing purposes, and we're not going to let them edit the mid-state vision. So we're going to turn over here's a behavior. It says editable. We just turn the editable off, and then they can't edit that view.
I can get the, where it says placeholders, that tab, if I click on my main storyboard. But if I click on the second, the zib, that column goes away. Did I mess something up?
By placeholders, where? Oh, up here.
Yeah,
Oh,
that column there.
yeah.
Like
That's the one I just, yeah.
if I'm in the main storyboard, it's there. But if I click on my zib
Right.
or the second controller Swift or the view, the only one it shows up in is in the main storyboard.
It's one of those little tabs in the bottom.
Yeah, it's thank you. Yeah, it's one of those guys.
Each of them.
Not completely useless, yay.
Which one? Show me.
I know it's-
Yeah, I'm not sure. Mine just went away too.
This? Okay. Thank you.
So which one was it you clicked? Because mine actually went away too.
It's the little, looks like a page in the bottom thing, to your right. Keep going, stop, I'll go up. That one.
Oh, just that. Yeah, that hides the whole panel. But I was thinking that there was, because now I got the scene up here. Oh, I think I know why. It's because I didn't have it. Yeah, I thought that the placeholder thing is not showing on the top though, but whereas over here it does.
There you go.
I think that might be related to what I have selected over here. No, I guess not. Well, whatever. We're not. In any event, the placeholder is not really important, but it's kind of weird that it kind of appears and disappears like that. All right, so now we have this guy. You can turn the editable off over on the right-hand side.
And that was in text view.
Yeah, that's the text views, properties, and a little ways down is the behavior. Just turn editable off, and now that shouldn't be a problem with the keyboard. You'd have to save it and then rerun it to see that. But now with that turned off, the keyboard shouldn't pop up because they no longer can edit that field. Oh shoot, that's right, I turned this back on. Yeah, now it's won't let you type in there, so keyboard won't pop up. It's selectable, but it's not editable. Okay. Another thing I wanted to look at was, this is kind of ugly, and then also the text for some reason, actual text itself is a little bit offset. I'm going to make this guy a little bit bigger, so I'm going to set my height a little bit larger on it. Then I'm also going to move it down. And let's see. So I'll make this about 60. All right. Another thing I want to do though is just kind of like it's like squarish blob in the middle of the and on the screen. And I want to set it so that it looks a little bit, it's a little more attractive. That's an easy one to do. If we go into the, we can do this by code. So if we go into the second view controller, and in the view will appear. Oh wait, you know what? Before we can do that, we're going to have to create a variable for it. So go back into the zip file, and you can create variables in zip files just like you do in the main storyboard. I'm going to move this guy over a little bit, and I'm going to do the assistant editor up here. See if it comes up with the right. No, it didn't. So it came up with view controller, which is not what we want. So if you go up to, if it comes up with view controller instead of second view controller, up here on this little bar up here, it'll show you what file it's choosing. You can go ahead and select second view controller. In this case, though, it selected the interface file, which I don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again. For some reason, this is a bug that they have that sometimes it will select the interface file, which is something that you don't even work with directly. It's something that doesn't even get created as part of the project. It just kind of does it behind the scenes, and then it'll pop that thing up when you go to the assistant editor. So when it does that, I just close the file, and then I go back to it, and I click on the assistant editor again, and then it'll pop up the source file instead, which is what we want. So with the second view controller source file it's selected, we can go back into our zip file and select the text view and do the control drag trick over to the source file. And we're going to create an outlet. I'm just going to call it txt info and connect it. And then that creates that as a variable in our source file.
On that you split screen here.
The little circles.
Yeah, the little assistant editor guy up here.
And you want it as a UI text view week?
Yep. So one other thing I'll point out, anytime you create a class variable like this, it always creates it as a var, as a class variable. So now we have that guy. So now what I'm going to do is in the code, I'm just going to like drag this over so the code's more visible. In the view will appear down here. I'm going to set a radius. I'm going to create like rounded corners on my text view. So now I have the variable txt info, and I'm going to say there's a property of UI views called layer, and the layer is it's actually kind of like an invisible film that allows you to manipulate the appearance of a view. You know, it's called a CA layer. The type is CA layer. That stands for core animation. So it's actually part of the animation fabric. So we can say the text info.layer.corner radius, and I'll set that to like 15 points. And that should give it a nice rounded edge to it. Again, that's in the view will appear, so that'll happen every time you run it. All right, and now it's got the corner radius. For some reason, mine is still way up there towards the top, so I need to fix that.
Since mine didn't round the top, it's probably underneath
Yep.
bar?
It's underneath the nav bar, yeah. Yeah, I have the same issue, so I'm gonna close this guy. I'm gonna change my alignment style to be left aligned. And turnkey style default. So this is the scroll view, which is the kind of like the view that goes around the view itself. Gives you the scroll bars. Bounces. Content mode, scale to fill. All right, so I'm gonna bump my constraint up even more. I don't know why it's still putting it way near the top. Change it to 100 and see what that does. And then this will probably be about it for tonight. Call it good. And there will be an assignment, so probably get it out on Blackboard by tomorrow.
Will this be our third assignment?
Nope, not unless there's one I don't know about. There, all right, so that's the way I wanted it to look. All the text is not, you can scroll, so you can scroll up and see the rest of the text. It's got the rounded edges now, so it looks kind of a little bit nicer. We could put like a label up here too. We could say about bed state or something like that. But at least now it has some basic core functionality. It's a starting block for an app. We are not going to, like, as we continue forward with the classes, we're not going to keep building on this app. We're going to make new apps. So this is probably about all we will do with this. Another thing we could do, that's part of the bounce. I think that's what that is. It's doing that's the bounce characteristic. But anyway, another thing we could do is we could do like you see on some websites and apps and stuff like that. We could come back on our zip file here. I mean, for what we're doing, there's not a whole lot. It's just like an information screen. But what we could do is put a switch down here and put that in our zip file. And I'm not sure how painful this is going to be with constraints, but I'm going to place it down here somewhere and then do a control drag and center it horizontally. And then this will be, a switch is just like a yes-no indicator. And you can put a label next to that guy. Although this is going to get constraints the way they are. Okay, so we can kind of center it off of this and say something like helpful. So the switch, you can see, has a value of on by default. It's just an on-off indicator. And let's see. We could, yeah, for right now, that's all we really need. So we can go ahead and run it. I'm thinking my switch is probably not going to be visible because I didn't set constraints on it. We'll see. Yeah, the helpful label's there, but my switch isn't. So I'd have to set some constraints on it and mucky around with it. But that's about all I was going to do. So if yours is not visible, you can go ahead and set constraints on it so the thing is visible. And then as far as message handling goes for it, so we don't have a variable assigned to it yet. So if you wanted to actually check the value of it, you'd want to create a variable like we did with the text view and all the other variables we worked with. So you just go to the assistant editor, open up your source file, and then you do a control drag from the switch over to the source file. When you do, that creates a UI switch variable. SW helpful, what I would call it. and then once they switch that on or off, you could actually intercept that, so you could create an action associated with that switch. Come down here and do another control drag over here, and this would be an action instead of an outlet, and it'd be a UI switch that gets passed into the action, and the event is value changed.
You have to put the name in.
Yep. So I can say switch changed,
Oh, okay.
and I connect it.
It is UI switch again.
It is a UI switch. Yep.
Okay.
Well, then you did another one up there too.
I created a variable. I probably actually really, because I have this event handler, I really probably don't need the variable, but because it's getting passed in to the
You
action.
have to do. I'm sorry, I missed part of that. So do you have to do helpful too?
No, I didn't do anything with a helpful label.
Because your switch change came in as a function. Mine came in with a. It did not come in as a.
You could create an outlet or an action. So what I did was I created both. I created an outlet up here,
Yeah, I got that one.
and then I also created an action. So I did the control drag. I'll go ahead, so you do the control.
Change it to UI switch instead of.
Yeah, you just change the type. Like if,
It defaulted to any object.
yeah, you just change that to a UI switch. If it's in any object, that's not a big deal because you can always typecast it. So I'll say if this was an any object that got passed in here instead.
So we want to change it instead of any object. We want it to be UI switch though.
Yep. But if it wasn't any object, you could say let s equals sender as UI switch, and then you'd have a switch instead, and then you can just manipulate all the methods and stuff that are available on a UI switch. So all I was going to do actually is with this guy was I was going to say if sender dot on, so in other words they think that this was helpful, and then I was going to present the UI view controller, alert controller that says, hey, thanks for the input, and then if it wasn't on, I was going to say, oh, that's a bummer, sorry you don't like it, or something like that, just something goofy like that. It was all I was going to do in there, and then they just click OK and it goes away, nothing else happens. So that functionality already exists in the first view controller, so you can just copy and paste some of that in there and change the way it works if you wanted to.
So did you also create an outlet for that?
Yep, I did, but you don't really have to. So you can just say controller and action are the two things I want. Actually, the whole logic can be, just copy the whole thing, including the add. So I'm copying all the logic from my UIAlertController from my first view controller into my second one. Down here in my switch changed. I'm just going to paste it in here.
And you're putting that underneath the switch changed?
Yep.
Which is mine's backwards, of course.
And in here, we're going to change our message again. So I wasn't really going to do all this.
So
But
did you take off the if thing again?
I did take it off. I just copied and pasted the whole thing in here. I took the if off. So I'm going to say if sender dot on else. There's another way of doing this, by the way. As long as we're going down this road, I'll just go ahead and do it. There's the ternary operator that allows you to eliminate some of the code. So we can say let
Just delete that.
let s message, which is a string, equals sender.on. So this is what's called a ternary operator. I don't know if you guys have done that at all in C#. And I'll go over the syntax here in a second. All right, so I got rid of the if-else thing and replaced it with what's called a ternary operator, which is basically this stuff here. So what the ternary operator does is it gets rid of the if-else part and just puts it all in one line.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can think of the question mark as the true part. So if sender.on is true, after the question mark you put thanks.
But that can also take PHP.
Yeah, it is a little bit like PHP. And then the colon is, if it's not true, then you put this, and then you don't have to do the if-else. So the title is going to be feedback results. And this will be s-message. And then the alert action will be the same, except here will be if sender.on.
So the message should be SS.
And then we're going to get rid of, I'm going to get rid of all this. In fact, we don't even need all this stuff. The alert action is just going to be the default, so I'm going to get rid of this. You can have it do nothing. You can have the action thing do nothing, so that's what I'm going to do. Let's be separated by, I might have screwed something up here. I think I did.
I still have a bunch of errors in mine.
Yeah, I just butchered that up a little too quickly. Unused function. Yeah, I know it's resolving to an unused function. This guy matches this.
That whole second setting, I think you can delete that one.
Yeah, this guy can go away.
Okay, now I still have a bunch of faults.
That goes to that.
Oh, I think it's the bracket.
All right.
Wow, I have a lot of errors.
So that's the end result after all that. All we're going to do is we're just going to pop up an alert. You don't have to have an action. It just, I mean, you don't have to have an actual thing that occurs inside here. If you'd have nothing, they just tap on the OK button and it goes away. Remember, this is being recorded, so I went through this pretty quickly because I wasn't actually intending to have all this stuff. But since we did, I'm just going ahead and finishing it off. But this is recorded, so you can go ahead and watch it and see what you need to do. I do need to fix my constraints, though, in this guy, so that this switch is visible. Let's see, how can I do this? All right, I'm going to, it's centered horizontally. I'm going to do this.
I said I've got an initialization of mutable value action was never used.
Is it an error or a warning?
That's an error.
All right, hang on just a second here.
Well, the variable controller. Do we call them? Can I see
All right,
one?
so I'm going to go back to it here.
Yeah, so action. So paste down both in the oh, I see my phone. And I just have one extra bracket.
So now mine just exits the app. When you hit OK for like the logon results.
It exits the app.
Yeah.
That's a crash, probably. Do you get a signal abort? You get like a red line in the code. All right. I'm just.
I use the if then and my switch does not do anything.
The switch won't, but you should have the message pop up. It doesn't.
What should activate it? It should be the switch change.
Yeah, the switch changed event should activate it. Let me just run mine and see if it works. Went through this pretty fast, so that's usually what happens when you go through something really fast is skip something.
You know, I put that other stuff in, but I commented out. I just left my original if then
Okay,
statement.
right.
But that should work too, right?
Yeah. The if statement shouldn't matter as far as using that versus the ternary.
Mine works. Yeah. I see that. Remember we said that first computer, like when the first more computers you got?
Okay, so yeah, it seems to be working.
Yeah, mine works when you click it, I get back and forth.
Yeah, you get the little message pop up. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop this and stop recording, and then we can I can look at see what's